All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting. We kind of know our own routine now. So Angela, if you want to come to the podium. And I got Miss Ludwina's email. Miss Ludwina, we got your email on the different things to discuss today. Jesse, did you want to do your thing first?
I'm gonna read.
Oh, you're going to read it? Okay. Can I just go real quick on some of the things on Miss Ludwina's email that we're going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the draft CEAs with TCA. We'll also be talking about the draft estimate considering needs for residents of Gordon Plaza regarding the moving companies. And we'll get an update on getting the copy of how the real estate tax bills are looking. And that I think Joe Thread is going to be handling that. But anyway, Jesse, come on up if you want to read your statement, then I'll bring Angela up to the podium to go over these issues.
All right, good afternoon. Well, before we begin, we ask for everyone's undivided attention because as always, there are those in the room who have attended these meetings and are up to date. For others, this may be a first meeting or some have been. We need everyone to be focused and clear and know what is going on as we advance this struggle forward. Our objective is clear. From the beginning, we have demanded a fully funded relocation, and we want access to the full funds that we need to ensure we can move into healthy housing of our choice. We thank everyone across the city of New Orleans and beyond who has and continues to support our fight as residents of Gordon Plaza. It is important that everyone know with no shadow of a doubt that our community as residents of Gordon Plaza have fought relentlessly to secure the allocation and approval of the $35 million that currently sits in Liberty Bank. We need to make it very clear that the $35 million did not come because we waited around for it. It did not come because of attorneys or the legal system. It did not come because of politicians who ignored us, made us promises, or told lies. It is a result of our fight and everyone who has demonstrated support specific to advancing this fully funded relocation. We thank you, but we need to name very clearly anyone who has chosen to align themselves with interfering, causing roadblocks, or deceptive and treacherous activity to create roadblocks or attempt to support kicking cans down the road, creating or allowing the conditions that lead to the premature death of our people. We already know that there is a special place in hell for folks like you. And we also know that we don't mean in the afterlife. We will fight like hell in this life because our situation has been just that, hell. We want to state this clearly because we have fought and we will continue to fight however, each step of the way until this is fully resolved. For us, being fully resolved is when we, as residents of Gordon Plaza, we are finally able to move off the toxic landfill that we still live on today and are able to move into healthy homes of our choice. We were told today that God helps those who help themselves. And that is exactly what we plan to do, because that is all we have ever been able to do, fight for our needs to be met and watch the actions of those who claim to be in support. People may have been able to get away with treating us like an afterthought in the past, but no more. We will not allow people to prey on us. And when we mean pray, P-R-E-Y, not pray, P-R-A-Y. We will pray and fight because faith without works is dead. And we who are here today, we are alive. No one wants to die from consent to a bullet, and no one wants to die from consent to living on top of a toxic landfill. Both are tragic. Both are the result of premature death, and we reject that. We are alive despite all of the ways people have tried to kill us, and we will fight going forward every step of the way. So today, we have some updates and also want to name some very important steps that still must be taken to move this forward. So here are the updates. As a result of our fight to secure an appraiser of our choice, due to justifiable historical evidence and concern regarding discriminatory practices and devaluation, that process is now moving forward. The appraiser of our choice, Chris Baker, now is in the process of working toward a completion deadline with 47 days remaining of a 75-day timeline to complete all appraisals. Therefore, and while that process is moving forward, we as residents, the residents of Gordon Plaza, are actively working on pinning down everything we need from the city of New Orleans and those engaged in the transactional processes regarding the relocation costs associated with the actual moving process. These relocation costs include three things. One, moving service. Two, temporary transitional housing. Three, necessary relocation costs, fees. It is important that this process is attended to with great care to ensure we do not take on any additional and unnecessary burdens, physically, mentally, or emotionally. We maintain and expect a focus on ensuring non-discriminatory practices and non-devaluation in all aspects of this entire process, even with finalizing the details with the relocation cost. Actions and accountability for forward movement in ways that align with meeting our needs as the residents of Gordon Plaza are the priority. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jesse. Real quick, I had a couple updates on my end with just a couple questions that you all had last week of me. One, you had asked if aside from Norman White, there was anyone who was going to be responsible for any of the transactions coming from the city side. I got an email back from Denisha Turner, who says that apparently the accounting division will also be involved in this. I responded back that I would like to have the names of the individuals from accounting. Haven't heard back, but once I get those, I'll pass those along. And then the other piece too, you all had again asked for any drafts of any particular documents that may be necessary for the purchase agreement or the closing. And I talked to Brent over at Bayou Title. He says that you already have the drafts of all the documents that you will need. The only thing that'll be different with any of the documents is obviously they'll be including your information, your name and price and things like that. So those were the two questions that I remember you all had from me of me last week. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Angela, on the items we're going over today.
Okay, thank you. In honor and recognition of each of the residents of Gordon Plaza who are here today, we will proceed forward with this meeting in the hopes that we can pick up from where we left off. I just want to name that board members had the opportunity to have a meeting with Mr. Joseph Threat, picking back up from where we left off today, requesting that Mr. Joseph Threat be the primary contact person in lieu of Miss Sharon Robles. He agreed to that. He did keep that meeting with us, and we're grateful for that. And we agreed that there were 4 draft documents that we were going to work on processing through. There have also been communication exchanges since then. And so what we want to do in this Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting is speak to each of those things so that everybody can be on the same page and we can be aligned to continue moving this process forward. So we want to talk about those. We do understand that there are folks here from TCA. We're very grateful for that. We want to also name that anything pertaining to that process that you had just talked about that we're picking up from last time, we'll loop back on those things at the end and then come full circle when we talk about the fees that need to be waived. Mr. Threat, you want to come up? We'll just walk through one by one. Just so that people are aware, I want to be mindful that the meeting that transpired last time and the meeting that transpired with Mr. Threat, I don't want to make any assumptions that people know what documents and what things we're referring to. So we're going to name them one by one just to make sure that people are clear. There are 4 different documents that we need in draft form. And the first one we already had the draft of the CA cooperative endeavor agreement with TCA, but it had blanks in them. So there was some communication that went back and forth between the city and TCA. There's been some kind of communication or development since then. And so we want to pick it up with that document 1 just to talk about where we are with that. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Threat, and then we'll just keep moving forward from there.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Moreno, boss. How we doing, Gil? Residents, Gordon Plaza, good afternoon. I just wanted to just give you an update of my work since our last meeting, my last meeting with Gordon Plaza residents. Today with me, naturally, Ms. Thelma French is here from TCA. Also brought as Ms. Tyra Brown, who's running OCD. She's very familiar with rental assistant, and she's going to help us with that second CEA, Gilbert, moving forward. And I asked her to attend today and give us some light on the processes and what she can do to assist the residents. Since our last meeting, I was just a tad late today because I stopped by Treasury. I submitted that list after our last meeting, Angela, to update the tax and the Treasury report. Well, we found out that when I got the list from Norman White, who's the chief financial officer for the city of New Orleans, the data was pulled on January 24th. Since that time, January 24th, some of the residents had paid taxes. So naturally, the list was not correct. I submitted it back to Treasury. I just left there a few minutes ago. So I'm gonna have an updated report from Treasury tonight, no later than tomorrow, to present to the task force. The CEA for draft for move-in expenses. I had several meetings, 2 meetings with Ms. French with TCA to talk about the move-in expenses. I also provided the last estimate from Ms. Robles on how we calculated those move-in expenses, and I had an interchange back and forth Gordon Plaza residents, and we kind of settled on a weight limit per room. I think it was 1,841 pounds or something to that sort.
Mr. Threat, can we just pause there too? Just for the sake of all people on the committee and the community, it's very important just to note, I want to separate out the conversation about the moving expenses, the temporary housing, and the tax bill. So I'm gonna just pause on the tax bill for a second. The thing that we wanted to just note is that in the last meeting, and we're asking for everybody's patience because it's just important that we be clear about things so everyone's on the same page. And Mr. Threat, we are clear, but we want to make sure that there's clarity for the whole task force, so people are not asking the same questions again. There are 4 different documents that we're talking about, separate and apart from the tax component. The CEA with TCA that has to do with the moving companies having to do with the trucks. We offered some feedback on the documents that were emailed over. And so the ones that Ms. Sharon Robles had pulled up as a draft for the estimate, we just wanted to make sure that there were some things that were cared for in the estimate. So let me name them out loud. The first was that there was a weight per room made up of the things that were estimated. But in communicating with the residents, they wanted to make sure that even though this is a placeholder, that it cared for the weight. And some, each of the rooms on the estimate might have come to about 1,400, but we know that they may have furniture items that are heavier. They may have items in housing, office furniture type items. So we were asking for a minimal estimate of 1,850 pounds per room. They may not need that, but minimally that we could just get a justifiable, reasonable average that cared for those things that they had mentioned before. And then we also wanted to just note that something that was missing from the estimate, and we just want TCA to be on the same page as well. It may not be a big deal to people now, but we don't want it to be an issue later, is that it's one thing if we're getting an estimate based on the move, but there are some residents who've articulated that they're going to need to make a full service request, which means some of them are going to request movers to help them box their belongings. And we understand that a moving company is going to have charges attached to that. And we understand that those expenses can be anywhere between $1,000, $3,000, and $5,000, depending on the moving company. So what we wanted to do was to be proactive. TCA has already agreed to generate some names of companies. We understand the residents already generating some. And in the last agreement, just because we get new faces in the meeting each time, we agreed that once those came together, we'd look at the draft. You sent over to the residents a list of some moving companies that TCA already sent. So they're processing through those as well. So we can have one cohesive list. And then that way we know that TCA will have the opportunity to engage them, make sure that payments can go through without any process. So I just need to surface those things out loud, because it's important for people to know that we do have residents that are going to request a full service request for moving. They made it very clear that some of them are not going to be able to pack those boxes by themselves, and we want to care for that.
Understand, and that estimate, Angela, is when we finalize those lists on the estimates and plug it into the CEA, that's what we're waiting on. We've got a placeholder in there for $235,000. I've signed the rec for that. The rec's been approved. So that money's sitting there, $235. If it's more, we can amend it. If it's less, we got enough.
Okay, so then all we really need to move forward in regards to this is we would just like to see the actual agreement. That's all we need. We don't, if that's already transpired and the $235,000 is there, then all we need to see is the agreement. We can move on to the next thing.
Right, and we can finalize that once we finalize the moving, what that delta is for the moving company, the average.
Okay,
That's worth.
so do you have what you need now that we've spoken to that and from the email that Ms. Ledwina sent over?
Well, I sent you the 9 company estimates.
Mhm.
I just need the residents to take a look at that.
They did. Okay, so
You
let's
got a
slow down.
difference.
Let's
I need
slow
that back.
down. You sent that over. The response that Ms. Ledwina sent back speaks to that.
Yeah, okay.
So what I'm gonna do right now, just to help out with that, is the email that you received, the last email that you received from Ms. Ledwina speaks to exactly what you're asking for.
Okay.
And I'm gonna put a hard copy of it in your hand.
Okay, that's fine.
So in the email, everything that's on this document is also in the body of the lead. You have all the- Okay, I just want to pause again, Mr. Threat, just to make sure we're all good on number 1, because I know there's lots of little moving parts, but I just want to make sure we don't blend them together.
And I think number 2 was we were talking about the rental assistance, transitional.
So number 2, and I want TCA to be able to listen in on this. Because that first draft agreement can move forward with that document that was just provided based on the things that were just said out loud. The second document just pertains to the skeleton operations component. I'm still only talking about the moving company part. I haven't gone to the temporary housing yet.
Okay.
And so Ms. French had already agreed to work on the skeleton around that. And all we really need is to see the draft around it and just return to having that conversation. We could, even if there's a conversation now, we're still going to want to see it on paper so that we can just talk about it. So I don't know if this is the appropriate time, if TCA is ready for that, or if you would like to submit the draft, because the skeleton is what we were waiting for.
Oh, you're talking about the rental assistance?
No, I'm talking about, so in the last meeting, there was a meeting that we actually went over to TCA and had. And then in this last meeting, we're just talking about the operations component connected to residents calling up and saying, hey, I found a mover from the list. I'm feeling good about this selection. We're ready to move on it. We just want to make sure for that. And I think we've already talked through
Just for
that.
clarification, just real quick. Joe, we're not talking about the CEA. It's just a document that kind of just lays out all the
Operation.
process.
Operation,
Yep.
I
Yeah.
got it. I got
Yep.
it.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say Thelma French, Total Community Action, President and CEO. I had prepared at the last meeting a draft of the operational procedures. The one piece that had to be amended was the taking out of at the request, was separating the rental assistance procedure from the relocation procedures. So we have completed our in-house operational procedure of how the contact and the process would follow. I do have to state that even with any of these moving companies that are on this list, we are going to have their insurance and their bonding in advance of being able to conduct any transaction with them.
So thank you for that, Ms. French. We did speak to that in the last meeting, and we named that. If there were any additional ones that were on your list, we want to make no assumptions. You can just tell us. Because of the ones that we received from your list, we have the understanding that you've already checked that for the ones you submitted.
No, we just
Okay.
got quotes.
Okay.
Because we are 95% federally funded,
Mm-hmm.
I have to do a vendor procurement.
Mm-hmm.
And in that procurement document, I would request copies of their insurance, their bonding, and all of that. And then we would have the final list.
Okay.
So we were waiting till we got all of the submissions to send out that call for vendors.
Right.
Okay?
So let me just, I don't want to overcomplicate this process. What we're just saying is that once you actually have all of the ones that you have, you all are doing the checking on verifying if they're licensed and bonded and all those things, right? So we're totally on the same page. All we are saying is that the list that we have thus far, the residents are also going to submit a list that we can merge, and then you can take it from there.
Right.
Once you have confirmed that everybody's legit, then that list will then be generated or transferred over to the residents so that they can be able to say, I can call from the list.
Right.
So we're on the same page about that. Let me go back to the operating procedures conversation, because that one, in terms of the skeleton, just so everybody's clear about the process for the community. What we're doing is we're trying not to just quickly go over stuff and assume that we're on the same page. We want to make sure that we're on the same page. So what we mean by that is the last time we were in the meeting, we talked about the skeleton. So what I'm saying to you is it's our understanding that the last draft document was combined together between the operating procedures for the moving and for the temporary housing. And it was our understanding on the way walking out that those things would be split apart and we'd see two different documents. So if that needs to be worked on, we're okay with it. We just need to see it, because I actually have in my hand the combined one, and I didn't want to entertain a conversation about something that hasn't been split yet, because I don't know which parts you guys are going to split out. Does that make sense?
I will say that we have talked about it, but without clarity about the division and the processes, we have not split it. But I
Okay.
can send you a draft to this
That would be awesome. Thank you.
of the split later this evening. Okay.
Thank you. That's perfect. And let me just name the why for everybody, because I know people out here like, oh my God, why they making such a big deal about every damn thing? It's because there are 67 households involved, and we want to make sure that everything's aligned. And unfortunately, prior to you coming into the equation, Ms. French, there's been a lot of haphazardness in the process with the residents of Gordon Plaza, and we aim to intervene and prevent that from happening every step of the way. So our conversation is never going to be for the purpose of antagonism. It's going to be for the purpose of just making sure we're moving together, one band, one sound, because it's going to be helpful to everybody. So with that being said, what I'm hearing you say is that we will receive a draft, 2 separate drafts, because what the community is reminding me of is that there was an agreement that these processes were separate and apart. We understand that they're coming together, but there's one CEA for moving. There's a separate CEA for temporary housing. So we just want to see the operation procedures component split so we can not have any confusion there. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you. So we will await the draft of the operating procedures. And we're not starting from scratch here, because we already know that there's a base for it. We just want to have a nice, clean distinction there. So 2 separate agreements. And then what I'm hearing you also say, Mr. Threat, from earlier, if I'm correct, and this is Ms. Brown. Here, Ms. Brown, nice to meet you. I think we came through the office. Ms. Brown, is that you are working on the CEA, is that correct? As it relates to the temporary housing?
That's for the rental assistance.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so what I am certain can happen, and I'm hearing the residents in my ear, is that once the draft document is done, is over, we can start the conversation from there about anything that people have questions or concerns about. Because our objective, Ms. Brown, is to make sure that before this process actually happens and people are calling up saying, hey, that everybody already knows the process, all their questions have been answered, people are feeling good and peaceful, it lessens anxiety, because part of the demand has been to make sure that this process doesn't add any additional burden mentally, physically, and emotionally. And we don't want that for the residents, and we don't want it for y'all either. So we trying to work through it, okay?
So Angela, with that being said, I just want to give a brief overview of what that would look like.
Okay, and can you speak directly into the mic so the residents can hear?
So just want to give a brief overview of exactly what that would look like. The CEA for the rental assistance will also be with TCA. The Office of Community Development would actually be the overseer, making sure that the process is going well, that TCA will be doing the eligibility determination as far as the renters. These funds will be just for renters only, and it's capped at 12 months. So they would do the intake process, provide OCD with the invoicing, and then those funds will be dispersed for that rental assistance.
Okay, so Ms. Brown, that's helpful. Everything that you said is in alignment with what we already understand, with the exception of one thing, and I'm asking this for clarity. When you say the Office of Community Development, are you referring to the City of New Orleans Office of Community Development?
That's correct. That's my office, the City Office of Community Development. We're
Okay.
the Office of Housing Policy and Community Development.
Okay, and so in that regard, are you the point of contact for that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we want to be able to work very closely with you to ensure that we are clear through this process. And I'm naming that because it was our understanding originally when TCA got pulled into the mix, they were saying your office didn't have capacity. So
So,
now I'm coming back to ask where the capacity is.
so that's what I'm saying, is that we do not have the capacity to administer the program,
Okay,
meaning determining eligibility, making sure that all of the criteria is met. That's what TCA will be doing. They will be the administrator of the program. However, for everything else, going over the policies, making sure that everything flows and that that money is dispersed, that's what our office will be doing. So we'll be the manager of it.
okay, so what I hear you saying is TCA is on the ground to help execute because they know the process, they have capacity, but you are here to make sure that it's done right according to what the City of New Orleans needs on their end. Can you just explain to us just real quickly so we're clear? Because we already know that TCA is doing the work, has the capacity, also knows. Can you just be a little more specific with us about what your role would be in terms, because I heard you use the word overseer.
So when I say overseer,
Mhm.
meaning that because the funding has to go through some office, it's actually going through our office, the Office of Community Development. The reason being is because we do have the expertise to do rental assistance. The criteria and all of that, TCA, along with myself, will go through everything that needs to be done as far as a checklist. Because even though we're dispersing funds to residents, we have to justify that. So we need to make sure that we have all the proper documentation as relates to the fund.
Okay, so one thing that we want to, this is great that we're talking about this. So one of the things we wanted to name out loud to make sure it didn't get lost in the sauce, because we had a meeting with TCA, had another meeting with Joe Thread, and now you at the table, we having a meeting here. One of the things that the residents indicated, get me together, Ms. LaDuane, if I don't say the thing right. One of the things that the residents indicated was very important to them was knowing that while there is a process, and they agree, whatever has to be done right has to be done right, is that they are not bound with unnecessary red tape that does not apply to their situation. So let me give you an example. There may be a place, a location that has been identified for the temporary housing or for the renters, okay? However, it might be noted that their expectation is to do a check in terms of people's income level. That would mess this whole process up and not be appropriate to the context of this effort.
So it's not based upon income. What we will look at is the household composition. And that is based upon like how many bedrooms would be needed, the FMR for the size of the household. So we would look at that because the FMR would determine what is the max that we could pay for a unit at.
Okay, so basically what I hear you saying is you're just trying to check to make sure people ain't trying to stay in a mansion if they need, but that's not them. That's not the
No,
residents. So
that's
let me,
not them, but
so I got it. I got what you're saying. We got, the point has been made. So, but let me just share with you this, just so that we're on the same page. When this actually came up, the JP Morale had communicated with Fair Housing, and Fair Housing gave the breakdown of the maximum that could be paid out for any amount of bedrooms associated. So they're aware of that, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
they're aware of it and they're using the same ones that we're using. It's
Okay,
not her.
great. That's great. Okay, thank you for that, Ms. Brown. I appreciate it. Okay, so with that being said, Ms. French has indicated that the separation out with the operating documents, meaning 2 separate documents that she will email over today or tonight. Mr. Threat, when it comes to the CEA, I mean, you've already put in for the placeholder, the funds, those kind of things. We will get that draft from you when?
We have the CAA right now for that. The only thing that was missing from that, from our last review, was the number, the actual number. We put a placeholder in for 235,000, but I can send that draft over to you today.
Okay.
Not a problem.
If there's something in that document that you just got that you need to make adjustment to, that's fine. We're just asking you by when will that happen? If you need
I'll
another
get
day.
it to you tonight, no later than tomorrow noon time. I'll get it to you.
Okay, we'll just put you down for that.
Okay.
Okay. And then the last thing is, just back to Ms. Brown as it relates to the CEA for, the rental component. What else is needed to finalize that agreement? Is there anything else needed for that?
So no, actually, Ms. French and I had a meeting today, so I will be finalizing that CEA with all of the language in it, passing it on to her to make sure, because the scope has to be in line with what she's going to be delivering,
Mhm.
and then we'll be able to have that for you.
Okay, and so what deadline feels peaceful to you?
Thursday and Friday, I'm in water, so say Monday.
Okay, Monday. We'll have that for you by Monday.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, before we move on, I'm just looking back. All right, so with that being said, thank you, Ms. French, thank you, Ms. Brown. I want to go address 2 other things. You could stay there or be wherever if you feel comfortable. I'm going back to Mr. Threat. So Mr. Threat, in our last meeting, we talked about the real estate tax bills. You've already taken the first step that you need to take, but I wanted to come to you, CAO Montano. Thank you again, sir, for being present and accounted for. We need some help. Okay, so let me name it out loud. Thank you, Ms. Denisha Turner, for being in the space also. Mr. Threat has already provided what was needed in terms of the tax bill, but the problem was the last couple of months, people were in the midst of paying taxes already. The residents of Gordon Plaza have been paying their taxes through the 2023 bill. Cool. We are simple. This request is so simple because he's already provided it to us one time. But all we are asking for is an updated copy of that document from Treasury. So it's my understanding, Mr. Threat, you put in that request again?
Yes, I put it
Okay.
again, and we should have it tonight or in the morning,
Okay,
the updated list, right?
so we should have it tonight or in the morning. That means the residents would most likely have it by noon tomorrow. Okay. Sir, we're gonna loop back and ask for some help if Mr. Threat can't get this, because this is a simple one. We already received it once, but sometimes what happens is these requests get made and they sit on people's desks for a long time. And then by the time we get it, it's outdated and we're starting over again. So this is a simple one.
Sure. And Joe pops into my office 2 or 3 times a day. So if you don't get it, just please let me know. And I do
I'm
want to
pretty
say,
confident.
I do want to say publicly, thank you to Joe, Tyra, the team, Denise, and everybody. You have no idea how much back work they're doing on a full
we know.
schedule. And I do want to,
We
I want to acknowledge and thank you all for, especially in the short time order, especially these CEAs, because I know the complications. So thank you all.
No,
Thank
but
everybody.
Gilbert, I stopped on the way here to Treasury. I went up to Norman White's office, the CFO's office, and walked down with his chief of staff to Treasury. So they gave me a level of confidence that I'll have that tonight or in the morning, the updated list.
Okay.
Taxes and penalties and interest.
Great.
Okay, thank you for that. We appreciate it. I just want to name CAO Montano, this part of the process that we're in with these transactional interactions. Just want to remind everybody in the room, this is all we were trying to get to 2 years ago. And this is all the residents have been asking for 40 years ago. And this part of the process right here, we're asking people to stay tuned in and locked in until the residents are able to move into healthy homes of their choice. Because just this morning, CAO Montano, people were looking in the face of the residents, calling them these people. They were looking into the face of the residents saying things like, yeah, you guys should have been relocated, but we ain't here to help you with that. People were looking in the face of the residents this morning saying things like, what you say, Mr. Jesse? God, what you say about God? God helps those who help themselves, saying that all of the people who are being paid to do jobs to support people across the city as residents and the residents of Gordon Plaza 40 years. Thank you for everybody, everything people doing, but we've been asking for this since the beginning of time. So just don't take it personally if we're not running behind you, glowing all the time, because this shit is taxing and it's unnecessary. And our goal is just to keep it moving forward. And every time the residents have asked for it a certain way, it's actually moved smoother that way because they know what they need. They're not getting rich off this process. So people who sitting in the cut trying to pray, PREY, ain't nobody getting rich off this. They're trying to get into healthy homes of their choice. And as soon as they have money, somebody gonna be right there on the other side to take it so they can get into their home. So we're just trying to get through this. Okay, so now with the tax piece, thank you for that. We'll be looking for that. One, I want to just loop back up because I also appreciate that Ms. Denisha Turner is in the room. Just real quick, going back, Helena Moreno, to this process here. We just want to remind everybody that it's our understanding that everything at this point should be transactional. And so we want to confirm again that the residents are not being treated like vendors in a process here. The city of New Orleans is purchasing their properties, and we just want to make sure that this process, there's the minimal amount of red tape involved. That brass program, we don't have anything to do with that. Is that correct?
That's
That-
correct.
Yeah, that's correct to my understanding.
Okay, I got a yes here. I got a yes from you. CEO Montano, you nodding your head. Can I get a verbal yes? I need a verbal yes from you, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so everybody heard residents are not vendors and they shouldn't have to be sitting around a computer clocking in stuff to the brass program. Okay, moving on. I also heard, I want to honor Ms. Denisha Turner indicated that the accounting division is involved. And so we just want to know, so we're not making any assumptions. Is the accounting division separate and apart from what the finance department is doing, or is that one and the same? What?
No, the accounting division's under the finance division.
Okay.
And there's different touch points relative to the accounting division, but it's purely transactional. So it's just a matter of pushing a button at the finance director's process. So it's not really a specific individual. I wouldn't even name the comptroller as a specific point of contact, but it's just here's a functionary tool of cutting a check or wiring a transfer the day before the check runs.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is Norman White is responsible.
Norman is the point person, but I think the question was, is there any other touch points? And the other touch point would be the accounting division to actually release the funds. And that's an individual, multiple potential individuals at any given time that would just act in that transactional piece.
Got it. So it's one more touch point and then Norman White. Is that what we're hearing?
Document signed, Norman White releases funds,
Mhm.
accounting division disperses funds. I would almost equate accounting disbursement of funds and Norman in the same realm.
Okay, and the reason we're asking is because when we were talking about which department, which person, who has to sign, who has to press a button, is because we needed to answer the question that Bayou Title had when they were here the last time doing their presentation about how many days it would be, because we're just trying to make sure everybody's in alignment with expectations on the turnaround on that. So when we calculated the days based on the last breakdown, we counted up 5-day turnaround. That's what we were calculating. So it should happen within 5 days, meaning that Bayou Title, we just need to know if Bayou Title understands that as well, meaning that by the time the disbursement of funds happens from that person hitting that button, we want to have an understanding, the residents want to have an understanding by which they can access their funds from Bayou Title. You see what I'm saying? Because the process goes transfer of funds and there's no other steps after that. There got to be some steps after that. The residents go to Bayou Title, but how many days can we expect from that? Do we need to engage Bayou Title about that, or?
I think I can try to answer that. So I talked to the folks at Bayou Title that once they ask for the funds to be released, the escrow account that Bayou Title has for themselves is also at Liberty Bank. So once, they say, Norman gives the green light, okay, transfer the funds to the escrow account for Bayou Title. Like it should be less than 5 days is actually what I'm hearing. Brent says that it should be like pretty immediate. Just because the fact that they're all kind of banking in the same place.
Okay. And then two final things before I do one more check-in. Did you say in one of your communications that you still needed some information from JP Morrell, or you passed that now?
No, we're past it. I got
Okay.
the CEA from a draft CEA for the rental assistance this.
Okay. Okay.
So we've got what we need there. And just one point with what Councilmember Moreno was saying is, I'm hopeful that Bayou Title, and this might be something, Angela, that you and the residents can talk to them about. I'm hoping that Bayou Title, when they do the title closings, it's multiple title closings in a day.
Mhm.
So when we transfer, it's not onesie twosies. We just
Yes.
transfer a lump sum of money to encompass all the closings for that day or that week or whatever it might be. So it'll just make it simpler for us.
Okay. So yes to that. So the last little thing just has a couple little prongs in it. So let me just get this out and we'll be able to wrap up. So in this process here, we understand, we don't see it in the process, but we know it happens. So we don't want to be negligent, that we know the City Planning Commission plays a role in this somehow. So we want to make sure that there's no problems there. Can somebody speak to that?
I mean, I don't know what role they play now.
The City Planning Commission?
Yes.
Denise
There-
is nodding. Maybe she,
We just want to make sure that there's not an unnecessary delay somewhere in the process.
on the
Because ain't
project,
nobody mentioned them.
yes.
Yes.
Yes, it's in the law that when the city of New Orleans purchases property, it has to go, the purchase of the property, real property has to go before the City Planning Commission. So we did present this before the City Planning Commission as a whole regarding all of the properties in Garden Plaza, because it's not just residential properties that we are obtaining. There are other commercial properties around the site that we are also obtaining. So we presented it before the Planning Commission and it has been approved. So that's not an impediment to going forward with continuing the purchase property in this area.
Okay, and then can you just share with us, is there any other action that the city council is gonna need to take in regards to that at a later date?
No,
I-
not to my knowledge, but I'd have to leave that up to Councilmember Moreno to confirm, but no.
Right, and I think Councilmember Moreno, in my meeting with the Gordon Plaza residents, it was a couple of addresses in that action that were wrong.
Mm.
So I think it was one agricultural,
It's just not, it's not, on the document.
it's not on the document.
And then
I
Ms.
think it-
Sheena's property,
Right,
is the same
2879
one, yes.
abundance should vice 7879 abundance, so it was a mistake there.
we just want to
Oh,
catch that in
Have to
advance.
Make a change.
Okay, so we would need, but do we need the council to be involved in that?
No,
Okay.
no, I'm just letting you know that we had that conversation.
Got it.
and it's-
Yeah, it needs to be
Thank you.
revised in a formal way, so there's no problem later. Yes, just so that you know, Ms. Turner, that the address that shows up that should be Ms. Sheena's, when you put that address into Google, it shows up in the water,
Okay.
like in the middle of the ocean, the water, the ocean.
We're going to address it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So with that being said, we go through the process, we get these drafts, we talk through them. What we're hoping that can happen is, once all of these are laid out, we want to be able to just say, then these next couple of Gordon Plaza Task Force meetings, that we can just make sure that every T is dotted, or every T is crossed, every I is dotted, and we can walk through the process cohesively. Because once that transpires, then we can feel a little bit more peaceful to know that when it's time for this process to happen, at the point at which residents should decide to accept an offer, that all of the things are in place going forward. I do want to surface one more time that at relocation costs include the moving expenses, they include the temporary housing or the rental housing, but we still have not pinned down. And if it doesn't happen in this meeting, it can happen in the next one. We still have not pinned down the relocation costs that we do know that the state constitution allows for, is for residents to be paid to accommodate for the fees around like a utility bill, the utility cut on and cut off and all those kind of things. And we also understand that the city of New Orleans has not wanted to entertain. We understand, and the residents definitely understand. They're not fighting you on this one. They don't want to go back and forth talking about receipts around, like I had to switch this on, switch that off. So we're going to surface that one more time, because in the process with title, that could be an easy thing to engage around. So if we need to talk about that more, we can, but I'm just naming that. For the residents of Gordon Plaza, they want to set the next Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting.
Okay.
And so let me check with them, because I had one date requested.
Andrew, can you pull up the calendar? Thanks. Thank you. Right.
The residents are asking for, with these draft documents that are coming, we believe that if we can continue this engagement in communication with all these parties attached to these agreements and such, that we can pinpoint all those down, make sure all the operational things are down, meet with the residents, give feedback on those things, get that moving company list together. You all get those addresses straight in there. And then they're actually asking if we can do that work next week, if we could come back together on Wednesday, the 22nd. Can you look in advance on that date?
How's the 22nd look, Andrew? Not going.
What does that Thursday look like for you all?
Bucare has it in the afternoon.
What does that Tuesday or that Thursday look like? Let me see what other meetings.
When is it? The 20th?
It can be either one of them days.
Okay. What about the 20th or 27th? Afternoon of the 20th, Monday, the 20th?
Really up to you. What time? It's up to
You
you.
can check on the 27th.
What time did you name?
He said in the afternoon that the chamber's available. That work?
Yeah, the
Okay.
20th.
4 o'clock?
Like-
4 o'clock on the 20th?
That work for everybody? 4 o'clock on the 20th? All right, everybody's nodding their heads. Yes. So 4 o'clock on the 20th is our next task force meeting.
Now, I want to emphasize again that that is because all this other work has to happen in between. So by the time we get these drafts from people, that will give the residents a chance to review through those things, offer feedback. We bring them full circle, and then we can come back on the 20th and pick it back up from there.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none? All right. Thank you all for being here with us. See you again on the 20th.